Hello fellow Cone cultists as well as newcomers, and welcome to another top 10 video. Today we're going to be going through my top 10 cursed movie tanks, since you all seem to enjoy the daily cursed tanks I've been sharing through my YouTube stories so much. Be sure to check those out as well. For this list, I'll be omitting any completely fake tanks, since I feel those deserve a list all to their own. If you think I missed any, please let me know in the comments, as I'm sure there's far more out there in super obscure movies that I just didn't run across while doing the research for this video. Starting out at number 10, we have the Panther Chaffee. This tank, from what I can tell, has actually appeared in several movies over its lifetime. These include The Night of the Generals and La Neige à la Feu. I hope I pronounced that right. And it now resides in the Saumur Tank Museum, still in its little costume that they dressed it up in. Next, at number 9, we have a fairly good attempt at recreating a Pershing from a Chinese film titled Xishe Hao. From the research I did, the best answer I could find for what chassis they're based off is the Chinese Type 62, although there's definitely inconsistencies with that answer. If you look at the fact that there's return rollers and stuff like that with the suspension, but I couldn't really find any other source that listed a different vehicle, and since China does have a lot of Type 62s in inventory, it would make sense. This film also contains some Shermans, also apparently based off the Type 62. Number 8 is the T-34-85 from the movie Company of Heroes. I'm not even sure what tank this was supposed to represent. My best guess is a tiger based on the shaping that they did to the mantlet. I guess they tried. At number 7, we start to get into far more cursed territory with a tank from a much more well-known movie, the Panzer Leopard from A Bridge Too Far. There's actually two versions of this tank in the film, one with and the other without a muzzle brake. And I can say at least they managed to get the nationality of the vehicle correct for this one. Now for number 6, we have another very, very famous example of a cursed tank. This time, the Tiger from the movie White Tiger. This tank is a very heavily modified IS tank, I believe, dressed up to look the part of a tiger, since the movie directors were too impatient to wait for the replica they ordered to be completed, or at least that's what I've heard. And it's very clear that filmmakers love to make attempts at recreating the tiger, since this is only one of multiple dummy tigers on this list, including what could be the most well-known tank on the list, the tiger from Saving Private Ryan at number 5. I'm sure you all expected this one to be here. This one actually looks pretty convincing in the movie and from a lot of angles, but once you see a side shot, it's very blatantly obvious that it is not in fact a tiger. Next up at number 4, we have the last of the tigers on this list, the T-34 Tiger from Kelly's Heroes. And I'm not sure if this one would be considered more famous than the one from Saving Private Ryan. I'd wager that it's not, since it's a bit older than Saving Private Ryan, but let me know what you think. And regardless, it doesn't make the tank any less cursed. At number 3, we get into some truly horrific attempts to recreate tanks in the movie Battle of Moscow. This comes in the shape of T-55s heavily modified to look like Panzers. Specifically, I think Panzer IVs. Although to be fair to the filmmakers, there's a lot of tanks in the scene that I'll probably be showing right now. So it makes sense that there weren't enough working Panzers for them to get, since working Panzers today are extremely rare. It would have basically been impossible for them to do that. So instead, we get some tanks that will haunt your nightmares. And in the number 2 spot, we have some more T-55s, at least from what I can tell, representing Panzer IVs from the film Tankers. And I will give some credit to whoever designed these ones, because they're dressed up very, very well, to the point where it's extremely difficult to tell what they originally were, and I'm basically just going off what I saw some other people saying online about them being based off of T-55s, but they still have absolutely nothing on the tank in the number 1 spot. Before we get there, however, I do have a few honorable mentions I couldn't quite fit into the list or justify making a second video on for a couple reasons. First up is the Jagdpanther from Band of Brothers. This didn't quite make the list due to the fact that Band of Brothers is a mini-series, not a movie, and there's not really enough tanks in mini-series or TV shows to justify a list of its own, in my opinion. This tank was actually done very, very well, and the only dead giveaway that I can tell is the distinctive plates on the lower plate of the T-55 it was built on. I'm sure you can also tell from the suspension. Next is another tank from one of the movies I already mentioned on this list, Battle of Moscow. This tank is actually probably one of the most cursed that I've included in this video, but I could only find one really, really bad picture of it, so I didn't want to include it in the list, but it's an IS hull with a KV turret mounted on the top. I'm not sure if the KV turret is real, or I'd imagine it's probably a replica. And finally, I'd like to mention the Chieftain Mark 10 from the movie Reign of Fire. Now, this tank isn't cursed in the way that the rest of them have been, but due to the fact that they actually expect us to believe that a chieftain would still be operational this long after an apocalypse type event. And finally, at number 1, we have a tank from the film Tali et Handela. I really hope I pronounced that right, but it's Finnish, so I probably didn't. Which gives us this horrendous KV-1 on a T-55 hull. And I chose the modified KV as my number 1, but this film also burns our eyes with another T-55 mock-up of, I believe it's an ISU-152. Truly, they are sights to behold and to shudder at. I do hope you all enjoyed this list. Did you agree with my ordering, and did I miss any? I'm sure I probably did, and I'm sure you probably don't all agree with the order that I placed them in. Please let me know in the comments. I'd also like to say that I by no means am trying to take away anything from any of the films that I mentioned. I haven't seen all of them personally, but they all at least try to accurately portray the vehicles of the time period with varying success. And I think that's something we can all appreciate. Hopefully in the future we can see more and more accurate tanks, or at least more tanks that we can laugh over. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.